Hello and welcome to Roportaj. This is Danish bin Nabi. In today's segment of Roportaj, I am joined by author A.S Bhasin, who has come up with a wonderful book titled Nehru, Tibet and China, which is published by Penguin Random House. In his work, Mr. Bhasin tries to analyze the history between China and India and what has led to this strained relationship between the two countries since last over 70 years. More from the author. Mr. Basin, explain to the viewers in your book, you have tremendously done an archival survey about this book. When in 1949, China Communist was coming into being in New Delhi under the leadership of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru was very keen to have good relationship with China. But at the very same end, there were concerns about the status, about the region that is Tibet, as far as India is concerned. So, explain to the viewers what basically was going in at External Affairs Ministry when this thing was happening.
Well, when the Chinese Communist Party came to power in China and set up the government in Beijing on 1st October 1949. Well, we welcomed it. Even when the revolution was on, we were quite clear that finally the Chinese Communist Party is going to win. And we were keeping ourselves neutral between Kuomintang and the communists, so that when the final outcome takes place, we should be very clear. And we were very happy that the new government had come, because there were lots of problems, not between India and China, the previous government, but the previous government itself had lots of problems within China. There were lots of corruption charges, various other charges, landlordism was there. So when the Chinese government was established, we were quite happy, welcomed it, and the ministry was quite clear. And Nehru had wanted good relations with China. But Nehru wanted that as far as Tibet is concerned, China should take up the matter with the Tibetan government in a peaceful manner, and whatever final decision taken between the two of them will be welcome to us. But Chinese had different ideas. They were wanting to establish Chinese rule within Tibet also and make it part of China. They said it had drifted away during the period when China was weak, central government was weak. And all the areas, outlying areas, which had drifted away, must come back to the motherland. India was very clear that we welcome China and will like to establish very good relations with China. And Nehru was very clear on this. He wanted Asian solidarity. He was absolutely given to Asian solidarity, and he said China will be important factor in establishing Asian solidarity. To that extent, he was welcome. And when in the 1950-51, Chinese government continued to occupy the Chinese seat in United Nations, India vehemently opposed that and wanted China to be replaced by the communist Chinese. It's a different thing that we did not succeed.
To the viewers, Nehru, on the one hand, wanted good relations with China. But what happened? Why did India and China are loggerheads right now? They have been in the past over 70 years. Did Chinese basically ditch Mr. Nehru? Because Nehru, it's clear, he wanted to have good relations with China.
True, he wanted good relation with China, and China too wanted good relation with India. But Chinese wanted at their turn. When Nehru opposed Tibetan occupation by China through military means, India opposed it. India sent strong notes and even said, this hostile approach to Tibet is causing us problem in the United Nations. Chou Enlai said, look, We are not bothered what happens in the United Nations. We have to occupy Tibet. It is our territory, and we will not tolerate any interference in that matter. After they had occupied it, and they were to have talks with Tibet in Beijing in 1951. Now, before that, let me add that Dalai Lama, when the Chinese attack took place in 1950, asked for asylum in India, and India conveyed that it will give asylum. Now, at this stage, the Chinese warned Indian ambassador in Beijing, Panikar, that if you give asylum to Dalai Lama, our relations will come under darkness. And we, in any case, will occupy Tibet. In that case, there will be some bloodshed. Now, we got the message that China is opposing giving asylum to Dalai Lama. So we uh, hinted Lhasa that it will be better if Dalai Lama, instead of coming to India, stays in Lhasa and give leadership to his people, which will be important factor. Now the Tibetan poor people took the hint, and Dalai Lama did not come to India. That was in 1950-51.
So, Mr. Bhasin, the basic friction between China and India is actually the Tibet. It's actually the status of Tibet. That's where things started to go downwards. Am I right?
See, Tibet was one factor, but the approach of China was different from India's. They had come to power through a revolutionary method, fighting a long 20-year war. And their approach to all issues was similar, that everything must be clear, no long-term negotiation, no this hanky-panky, everything must be done quickly and finished. In 1952, for instance, we had moved the resolution. In the meantime, as you know, Korean War was going on, Korean War, and there were prisoners of war on both the sides. Then we had moved resolution in the United Nations General Assembly. India had moved resolution about the repatriation of Korean prisoners of war, which Chou Enlai did not like, or the Chinese did not like. Now, what did they do? They called him mother of all evils. Nehru, mother of all evils, or parent of all evils. So their friendship was, if you oppose us, we are not your friend. You claim, and they said very categorically, you claim you are our friend, but we see no sign of any friendship. Nehru was naturally upset at this attitude of the Chinese, that he, on the one side, was wanting to be friendly and making friendly vibes. Here, they are talking in such a hostile manner. Well, I mean, even if he was upset, he could do nothing. He only told the foreign secretary that when you speak to the Chinese ambassador in Delhi, not specially, only when you speak to him about some other matter, by the way, refer to him that we are their friends and they should use better language towards us. And he recorded on a file, I don't want to lose Chinese friendship. The Chinese had shown no sign of friendship, but he was so mad after Chinese friendship that even after being humiliated, he was willing to pocket it. In 1952, we had our first general election. The Chinese made very disparaging remarks about the elections, and we kept quiet. So Chinese had a different agenda. We had a different agenda. We were going out of the way for friendship. Chinese were not. Chinese had friendship at our turn. They were not worried about solidarity. Look at what Mao said when the PRC was established. He said China will become the biggest power in Asia, in the world rather. We have been humiliated in the past. We will refuse to be humiliated in the future. And we want to be powerful nation. What was Nehru's ideal? Peaceful, sort of peaceful relation with neighboring countries, and peaceful approach to problems, non-alignment as it developed later. So there was a difference in the perception of two people, two parties, two governments towards friendship. Their friendship was at our terms. We were asking for friendship in a give and take manner. So they were not willing. They said, our terms are important. That was the
Mis-
problem of
Mr. Bhasin, after reading your book, one gets a sense that Nehru very early had given up on the idea of independent Tibet. Do you think, had Nehru persisted with this Tibet thing, do you think that the outcome of the Tibet could have been achieved?
I'm sorry, not, because Chinese had what a revolutionary army, which had just made huge sacrifices to come to power, and they were also involved in Korean War. They were their approach was, as I said, out of power. Now we had no capacity at that time to meet the Chinese sort of hostile attitude with the army. Since 1947, after independence, the Indian army had been split between India and Pakistan. Then in whole of 1948, our army was engaged in war in Kashmir. So whatever resources were there, it had exhausted them. And there were no fresh resources available. And immediately after the Kashmir war ended, Nehru had demobilized a substantial part of the Indian army. So India was in no way position to meet the Chinese aggression if we had decided to go in for it. So even army's opinion was that we cannot take on the Chinese. So it was not possible to meet the Chinese on their plane. That was the problem. So we had to accept Chinese domination of Tibet, much as we did not like it. When 1950, sorry, in 1952 and 53, when things were happening on both the sides, Chinese at no time showed any sign of friendship. And how, when this 1954 negotiation started on the question of Tibet, this is what you call agreement between India and China on inter pilgrimage and inter trade, trade intercourse and pilgrimage. No, just before that, in 1952, we had given a note to the Chinese that there are 7 issues in Tibet which we need to settle with China, and whenever possible, we can talk about them. When this note was given, Mr. G.S. Bajpai, who earlier was the Secretary General of the Ministry of External Affairs, and at this stage, he was Governor of Bombay. He wrote to Panikar, we are given this note, where only 7 issues are mentioned, and border is not one of them. Why? After border is important. Well, his explanation was, look, if we have asked them that these are our borders and we discuss one to border issue, Chinese, first of all, would not accepted our borders, and they would have at best suggested talks on the border issue. And we were not prepared for it all. Even before that, Panikar had mentioned to Nehru that Chinese had never mentioned about the border issue. And Nehru was surprised that when Chinese are talking so much about various other issues, are not talking about the border at all. Panikar said, I also did not mention because you had told me when I was leaving to take up my assignment in Beijing that we are sure about our border. And mentioning this to China about our border would mean that we have some doubts, and that will be not the ideal situation. So we should keep quiet about our border, and so Nehru acquiesced in that position. There's no need to discuss the border. So border issue from our side was never raised, and Chinese were also sleeping. They first wanted India to be out of Tibet, and then raised the border question.
Coming to this border issue, in your book, you have mentioned that Chinese dealings on the borders with Russians, Myanmar, Nepal, almost they have settled the borders. Recently, they have also done an agreement with Bhutan to resolve their border issues. Why is it with only India that this issue still persists? Why they are not willing to resolve the border issues with the Indians?
Well, Chinese were very keen in the early stages to settle the border. Someone had even suggested to Nehru in 1950, look, our borders have never been surveyed. As modern states, it's important to have borders based on surveys and after discussion with each other. In 1954, when Nehru had gone to Beijing, October 1954, Nehru had visited Beijing. At that time, Chomilai had said, yes, our borders are not what they should be. They are not demarcated scientifically. We will conduct surveys and then discuss with the country concerned. Chomilai, even in the Bandung conference, said, our borders are not final. They are old borders and we will settle them after surveys. And therefore, one by one, they have settled their border with various countries. With Nepal was willing to, Bhutan is now willing to, and other countries. As there was a problem between Soviet Union and China on border, a problem with China and Vietnam. But over period, they have settled the matter. Problem with Nehru was he felt whatever our borders are, they are final and they are not open to discussion. In November 1950, he said in Parliament, our border in the eastern sector is the McMahon line, and that is our border. We will not anybody cross it. About the western border, he said, it is based on what you call, I'm forgetting the term, it is known by custom and usage. Yeah, the word he used was custom and usage. So the border is well known. Therefore, there is no need for a survey. He maintained this position throughout. In 1959, when Chauvelin said that this is our border problem is there, it is not based on survey, so let us do it. Nehru again persisted that it is known by custom and usage. So what is the fun in having a border in surveys and all that? But which was not a right position because custom and usage was good in 17th, 18th centuries, but not in the later part of the 20th century, where there were instruments and tools available for survey. Borders have to be very meticulously surveyed, discussed, and then finalized. That was the position of Chinese. But Nehru said, well, our border is well known by custom usage, and there's no need for discussion. That is the problem. In 1956, let me add here, Burma had a problem with China on the border. U Nu was a friend of Nehru, and they were good friends. He had consulted Nehru about this problem. And Nehru suggested to him, you go to Beijing, discuss your borders with them, and some solution will be available. Please do not take a hard line. If you take a hard line, then there will be no solution. He was advising him don't take a hard line. But in our own case, he was taking a hard line. There's no use for when the borders are well known. With other countries, similarly with Nepal, Burma, all that, at that time in 1960, again, we were told, let us discuss. In January 1952, 62, January 1962, UNU was on a pilgrimage tour of India, and Nehru met him in Varanasi. UNU told Nehru, both Chao Enlai and Chen Yi, he was a foreign minister, are keen to settle the matter with you. Why don't you go and settle the matter? They are they have been to India 3 times. You have been there only once. It is your turn to go. Nehru did not agree. Here was another opportunity, but he allowed all opportunities to go by and not do any discussion. He stuck to the position, our borders are well known and there is no need for any survey. This was untenable position. Another problem arose in 1954. After Chou Enlai had visited India in June 1954, and after he had left, Nehru had ordered there is this western sector, that Ladakh side, which is undefined in the Survey of India maps, in our own maps. When we became independent, the Survey of India map showed this border undefined. And India reprinted these maps in the subsequent 2-3 years and continued to show the border undefined. So there was a need to define the border. And international borders are defined between two stakeholders, not unilaterally. But in 1954, Nehru ordered that a line may be drawn. Old maps may be withdrawn, new maps will be printed, and the new maps should show a definite line as our border. And that will be our border, which we will not open for discussion with anybody.
Mr.
This was
Bhasin,
not a.
Mr. Bhasin, let me get here the other region, which is the Ladakh region. Did China see the whole Ladakh region as its own territory, which we have seen after August 5th when the special status was abrogated in Jammu and Kashmir? Did China see the entire Ladakh region its own region, or were there any certain boundaries that certain boundarical areas which of the Ladakh, particularly which are of China's interest?
No. See, there was no boundary marking in this region, in the Ladakh region. There were certain surveys done by the British. And there were two surveys. One said it should be part of India, other said it should not be part of India. But no final, the British were in correspondence with China. But in those days, unlike today, when you send italics and next moment email will be replied, those days letter will go, take months, and reply will come after 6 months or not come after a year. So those were different days. So the correspondence was there, but final settlement had not been made. So therefore, when India became independent, the Survey of India map, which were printed during the British time, showed this border undefined in our own maps. And as I said, these maps are reprinted by India in the next 2-3 years, and we continue to show this line as undefined. Now, this Aksai Chin area, which is the matter under dispute, this area was a no man's land. Chinese had used it, as Nehru, remember, said, not a blade of grass grows there. The climate is very hostile, not suitable for any human habitation. But for Chinese are very important after they had occupied Tibet. They attacked Tibet in 1950 through this route. And later on, continued to use this route to reach Tibet. And in 1957, they had even completed construction of a road. And we were not even aware. We had no presence there. Nehru in 1954 asking that new map be printed and line may be drawn. No, nothing was done to occupy the area. So our presence was just not there. The Chinese occupied it. They had checkposts here and there that constructed a road. And when this road was constructed, we were not even aware. We came to know about this road when the Chinese issued a press note about the inauguration of the road. And later, after having come to know about this road, we sent a note to the Chinese. It was marked informal note, not a protest note, informal note that you have constructed this road. And said, unfortunately, that the people who constructed the road, workers and engineers who came to construct the road from the Chinese side, did not ask for Indian visa. And thirdly, and more comically, we asked Chinese that one of our petrol had gone missing in this area. If you find it, please repatriate to India. Now, we were claiming this territory as ours and asking the Chinese to trace our missing petrol. The Chinese said, yes, we have found your petrol. They were conducting a survey on Chinese road and they have been arrested and they will be repatriated. The word uses repatriation, repatriation from one country to the other country. That means this is our country and they will be repatriated to India. We replied, whether it is Chinese territory or Indian territory is a matter in dispute. So if there's a matter in dispute, we should discuss. We were not willing to discuss also.
Mr. Bhasin, point well taken. Let me come to the present situation now. Since 2017, we have seen the Chinese aggression starting on the borders, especially starting from the Doklam area. Do you think this strategy is a leap out of a rule book from 1962?
Well, 1962 was a bad experience for India, and Chinese were able to see that India is a paper tiger or a weak country. But we had, over the years, strengthened ourselves, army was reorganized. So it was not out of weakness of 1962. It is a question of marking tri-junction between the Doklam, between India, China, and Bhutan. And there were Chinese were naturally marking the tri-junction in their own favor. So there was a problem. And once problem arises, start at one, then it becomes big and bigger and bigger if it is not resolved. This border problem has not been resolved over the last almost 60 years. So therefore, now what Chinese offered in 1960, that we accept your claim on McMahon line, you accept our claim on this Ladakh area, Aksai China, I mean to say. Now, we did not accept it. It was a very reasonable offer. Now, they are not willing to accept it. They said, no, this is also our, and McMahon line area, that is Tuang, is also ours. Now, the problem has become what was so easily soluble until 1960 and until 1980 even is no longer possible now. That offer is not on the table anymore. And the problem has become acute. And if I am sorry to say, this is a fact, and we have to recognize it. If anybody thinks that they can evict China from where they are in Western sector, I think it is a mistake.
Mr. Bhasin, I am terribly running out of time and my last 10 minutes left for this show. I must ask you from this book once again. In the present day context, what is the role of Tibet as far as the bilateral relations between India and China are concerned in the present day context?
I don't think Tibet has any role to play. They have it is there. They you can shout about it. Chinese can. See, Dalai Lama is already 88 in July. He became 88 and he now heading toward 89. How long he will live? And when he passes away, and everybody has to pass away, human beings, what will happen? The Tibetans in India will maybe find a boy and put him up as the Dalai Lama. The Chinese will put up a Dalai Lama in Tibet. They won't recognize this boy in India. They have already said that anyone who's declared a Dalai Lama has to have their approval. And they're unlikely to approve. Secondly, and most important, the child becomes Dalai Lama of 1 or 2 years old. He will need education and religious and other education for next until the age of 18. In 16, 17 years in between, people will forget Dalai Lama. This Dalai Lama has certain position as a sort of a holy person and respected and all that. But look, 60 is a long time for the boy to mature into a full-fledged Dalai Lama. Will the world remember him? Will they wait for him to grow? World has no time. World is going ahead at great speed today, as you see it. So Tibet has no role to play, excepting that it will be nuisance for the Chinese. Undoubtedly, it can act only as a nuisance.
Mr. Bhasin, point well taken that Tibet cannot play any role right now in the present geopolitical context. Let me hold your book once again for the readers so that it reaches maximum people and more people read it. Thank you, Mr. Bhasin, for talking to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please subscribe to our channel Roportaj and press the bell icon to remain updated.